consecrated, Lord, to thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee.
Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power that you choose.
Here am I.
Here am I.
Oh,
Lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come. Oh, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. Title them, and I would like to title this "Broad is the Way."
All right.
In this verse here of Matthew 7:13, it says, enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction. And there are many who go in by it. And I'm going to stop right there for now. Just remember, broad is the way.
All right.
You know, and I was raised in my mother raised me as a single parent. And I sort of like to clear up stuff when I talk, because I try to talk truth, and some of it is good stuff, some of it is bad stuff, but I always try to clear up one thing, that my mom was awesome.
All right.
And there is no perfect parenting, fathering, mothering. There just isn't. There is no protocol for just doing it right. So for mamas, for daddies, you know, don't be so terribly hard on yourself. When I like to tell a little story I call government cheese kind of faith.
All right, come on.
And when I say that is because when I was a kid, I remember going to get government cheese, and we'd go stand in that line. And I remember my mom used to take a little butter knife, and she'd take some kind of little crackers, and we'd have a little bag of stuff, and we'd be there in line, and there'd be other kids I knew, and she'd have other parents that she knew. And the reason I tell that story is because I think good mothers are special in how they can make bad moments seem awesome. And my mother we'd sit in that line, and on the way home and stuff, you know, we'd walk, and she'd be opening up the crackers, and we might cut a little bit up off the bologna and off the cheese, and I'd eat it, and we'd walk home singing little songs and just happy. And I'm sure that the reason I was in that line is because she was struggling.
Right.
But she had a way of not letting me know it. And that's what she did for me all the time. So I tell that story so that you'll understand the kind of person that she was, and not to confuse that with who I became. came. And so, I was raised in a single parent home, and so my mother raised me, my granny, uncles. My uncles were sort of pretty much my father figures. Everything I knew about that, being a father, and hardworking men, and stuff like that, I got from my uncles, Dookie and Charles, and so I credit them for who I am today. Grandmother made us go to church. Wasn't no, I'll go next week. It wasn't none of that. It was get your butt up, get your clothes on, we're going. Might be late, but we was going. And I miss my granny. But we're a Christian home, Christian family, Christian community. But with that, we also was a family that partied and stuff of that nature. And just like life is now, we partied for everything. There was, summer break. People in the summer, we had parties and picnics and family reunions. And whether it was birthdays, whether it was 4th of July, there was just cookouts. And that became just, it is the norm. It didn't become the norm. It just was, and it is, And I just remember how I really enjoyed those gatherings and just the music. Love music. I love music because of those memories and the music and the laughing and the just the fun, family, just meeting people you ain't seen all year. But I remember also the drinking. I remember the smell of weed, and I don't remember like really no hard drugs and stuff like that. But I remember that I enjoyed those environments. And I remember, when people used to say, this is grown folks' business, or, go play with the kids. I used to find ways to get in there and to be in that environment. I used to walk around, and kids are crafty. I tell people all the time, I said, don't underestimate the little fella, because I was crafty. And I knew how to, if I walked close enough to the gathering, and if I sung a song, if I was going to the cooler, to the refrigerator, and I started singing, somebody always called me, come here. And so it put me in the atmosphere, and I would sing little songs, so I become like sort of the life of the party. And we would talk about, I loved that, and I loved art, and I loved football. So the men would talk to me about my football games, and as a little kid, they would come and watch me play. So I found ways to stay in environments where I didn't belong, for real. Sometimes your talents will put you in places that you're mentally not ready for. So it's cool to push your kids, but be careful. I think the title brought us the way. I say that because I took a much broader route. I took a long way home. As a kid, I don't think I really recognized sacrifice. I don't think being a child is confusing. Being an adult is hard, but being a child is so confusing. And I believe in myself that I particularly only paid attention to the fun part of my family and the gatherings. I didn't recognize that they worked hard every day. I didn't recognize the sacrifice, the family involvement. Everybody was so close and connected. Even the family who lived in Cincinnati or Louisville, everybody was really connected in a way that I don't really see or feel that anymore. And so I noticed the bad stuff. I noticed the stuff that wasn't going to necessarily be good for my future. I recognized the worst of amazing people. And that sort of just put me on a whirlwind, really, for the rest of my life. I remember, we do little things that we consider small. We'll tell a kid to go and get a beer out of the refrigerator, like they used to me. But I recognize what the beer did.
Right.
I'm looking at the party. I'm looking at the laughing. I'm looking at the environment. It was the music. I seen what it made them feel cool. It made them seem cool. It made them feel good. And so I used to steal those beers. I'd go get a beer for them, but I might take 4 or 5 with me. And I'd put it up. And I say that because I think we take things for granted. You don't know the pressure of what you're asking a little kid to bring you. I don't ask my kids, now I don't even ask them to bring me a pill bottle.
Right.
Anything
That's right.
I consider that's grown enough, I can handle that myself. You don't know what you're asking them to hold, to bring you. Broad is the way. I took for granted the good, and I wanted to be a grown-up. And I was really confused about what a grown-up really was. Remember, as an 11-year-old kid, 12, I started playing high school football. I played high school football at a 12-year-old. But that puts me playing football with 18-year-old kids.
Right.
18-year-old kids, because they're graduating, they think they're grown. So they will hang around as old a person as will let them. Because 18-year-old kid wants to be as grown as they can. So I hung around kids that hung around with much older people. I mean, and I used to think, well, whose fault? Somebody asked me one time, well, whose fault was that? And I was like, it certainly wasn't my mama, because all her baby was doing was playing football. She was just proud of the little kid. Look at my son. She had no idea, but then what that was going to do. So I learned to fit in with kids who didn't necessarily want me to be there. I mean, what is this little 11, 12-year-old kid doing playing football with us? He doesn't even deserve. So I just fit in. I did what they did. Back in those days, there was the acid and the white crosses, the pills, the cocaine. I did what they did. I learned to hush and be quiet and just fit in. Broad is the way. I sort of just catered to what anybody was doing.
Right.
Just so that they would let me be there. I become cool. I become silent. I close my eyes to it all. Be careful what you push your kids into.
Right.
And I talk about my childhood because the grown-up guy doesn't change much from the kid. I'm still the kid. I'm still doing the kid stuff at 44 when I went to the Isaiah house. I'm still the same little guy. I just look bigger, but my mind, I still thought the same way. I was still mischievous, still manipulating. I was still taking the beers out of the refrigerator. As a kid, I also cut hair. I used to cut a lot of hair for people in Danville. I cut the whole black community in Harrisburg. I cut the whole football teams every Thursday. But I packed around my little backpack. And in my backpack, I'd have beers, and I'd have liquor, and I'd have weed. And I mean, nobody was going to stop and ask me what was in my bag at 13, 14 years old. The only person I really had to worry about was my mother. And I would take that stuff out way before I got home. And so, and I say that is because, like, nowadays we have these phones. So we have a way to connect with our kids. And I try to stay connected. But as a kid, once again, she was proud. She thought I was this little responsible kid. I was going around and I was in all these homes, all these different houses, getting money, cutting hair. I come home with money. She thought I was just a responsible little kid. But what I was really doing, I was spending time in environments that I did not need to be in. I heard all the language. I seen all the drugs. I heard the fussing and the fighting with the husband and the wife and the girlfriend. I heard everything. Every house is a different community.
Yes, it is.
Every time you let your kid run around and go into another house, you're showing him another community. You're allowing him. You never know what goes on in people's homes. And so I become the cool kid. Once again, I kept my ears shut, kept my eyes closed. And so the things that they were hiding from me at first, they exploited in the end. I remember at some point, some man was like, he's like, do you smoke cigarettes? Because he didn't have change. And I did. But then again, I'm like 13. So that's how he pays me. And the next time he pays me with weed. And the next time he pays me with acid. And that's how it was. First they hid things. And then they gave me things. And then I expected things.
Right.
So now I'm getting angry when you don't give me a joint. And I'm getting angry when you didn't give me a beer. I was getting prideful, wanting something that I had no business. And I should have, took heed when all I kept hearing was, don't tell your mama.
Right.
Don't tell your mother. Life really don't change from that. I ended up I graduated high school. I get to my senior year and I wake up one day and I'm looking at the sky, right? I was looking at the ceiling wherever I was sleeping at that day, and woke up somewhere. Looked at the ceiling, and I remember my head was hurting really bad, and my stomach was really sick, hungover, really bad, just pounding headache, really felt like throwing up, drinking or whatever I was doing. And I remember I lay there about 30 minutes, and all of a sudden I jumped up, and it dawned on me it was graduation day, my senior graduation. And it was as if I almost forgot. And I remember calling my mother. My mother doesn't answer the phone, so I rush home. And I'm sweating. It's hot. I get home and take a shower real quick. I have an hour to go. Put my cap on, my gown, and I walk. And I'm sweating. And at the program, I have to sing that day. And I make it. And I get in there, open that door to the church. And I remember people are sort of looking back at the door. And I figure they're trying to see if I'm going to make it. If I'm going to be here on time. And I graduate. And the only reason I tell that story is because I'm positive that God understood something. For the next 25 years of my life, I would fail at everything.
My Lord.
And I'm positive that God wanted me to have at least one thing that I could brag on, one thing that I could claim.
My Lord.
Because I wasn't a good father, wasn't a good husband, I wasn't really a good son, I wasn't a good brother. I probably had, you think I'm crazy, but I probably had about 40 jobs. I'd work a job for a week and get paid, and that'd be it. And I'd get another job, and I'd get another job, and I'd get another job, and until nobody would hire me.
Right.
When I hit about 35, 38, they'd had enough of me. Nobody hired Germaine. I remember walking out one time, and now it's been 2 years I've been looking for a job, and I know my people, friends, mama, they was like, you ain't working, but she didn't really know that I'd been looking. But it wasn't until I was walking out of a store one day and I heard somebody say, that's Germaine. That's Germaine, don't hire him. And they was telling them stuff, what kind of person I was. And I thought to myself, well, that's why people don't hire me. I've become the butt of the jokes and the talk of the town. And it will happen to you. I don't care who loves you or how much you think somebody cares about you. Over time, you wear people out. And you got to give it to God. God has to take it. All you can do is pray. Ended up quickly robbing Golden Guns over here in Danville. Me and some friends. I got receiving stolen property. I guess that was 1993. And 1993, I stayed on parole, on probation, always reporting to somebody from 1993 to 2006. Stayed in trouble. Just couldn't get out of trouble. Didn't know how to get out of trouble. And I remember, the first time, jail did not scare me, and I wish it had. I remember going to jail and getting out, and it was as if I had graduated into something. And I remember being sort of proud of it, and like I made it out of something. And I was, how people are. And the thing about it, the people in the community they'd say the joke. They'd say, what kind of jailbird don't fly? What kind of bird don't fly? And they laugh about that. And they'd make little of it. So I suppose because they made little of it,
Right.
I made little of it. I made little of it myself. Ended up at some point, just like I say, in and out of jail. And it's amazing. I sit in jail, I watch people get murdered. It's not so much like you watch these movies and you think it's just a movie.
Right.
But no, I've seen people get beat to death with cans in the pillowcase. I've watched men get raped. I've watched women guards get raped and beat. And it's amazing what you get used to.
That's the truth.
Because when I first got locked up, that stuff startled me. It bothered me. Over time, it didn't bother me at all. It's amazing what hardens your heart
Yeah.
to where it doesn't hurt anymore. The pain is supposed to feel something. There come a point in my life I don't necessarily think I felt much. I didn't have a lot of sympathy for people, and that's for whoever. Like I said, I was not there for my kids. It was as if I let other people take care of Germaine and Kyra and Jordan. I let other people deal with them. But then again, my heart was hardened. I knew somebody would take care of them. It's crazy how we think and how we process things. And I remember going to my mom's one time, man, and I was hungry, or I needed money. There was something I needed. And I knocked on her door, and I remember my mom opened the door, but she didn't open it all the way. And it's the first time ever, she just cracked it. And I tried to get in my mom's house, and she just sort of leaned with me, wouldn't let me come in. And I remember she didn't let me in that day, first time in my life. I'm about 38. And I remember I left, and I turned her away because we started arguing. And I remember I started crying. I started to cry a little bit, so I turned around because I didn't want her to know I cared. That she didn't let me in. And for a year, I disappeared. And I was going to show my mother that I didn't need her. I was going to show the number one person, the person who did for me more than anybody in life. I was going to show that person
My Lord.
that I didn't need you. I didn't need you. Because I had friends. I had friends that were going to take care of me, that would help me. So I went to Lexington and I stayed there, and I had nowhere to go. So I went there. I went to the Hope Center as a place to just sort of stash my clothes and sleep if I needed to. And remember, I was there for about a year. And I ran into Pastor J.D. Short, and J.D. stopped me and asked me what I was doing. And I know I looked awful. Had the same clothes on. He could tell. And before he left, he got my phone number, and I really thought he wanted it for me, for him. But what he did was he gave my mama that phone number. And one day the phone rang, and she answered that phone, and I answered the phone, and it was her. And so we talked for a minute, and I remember she asked me how I was doing, and I was sitting there telling her how well I was doing, how good I was doing, but I was lying. And I remember for the first time how little I felt.
Yeah.
I felt so small because I was lying about doing well. And then it dawned on me, I didn't move to Lexington to do well. I moved there to lie about doing well.
Right.
We run. Broad is the way. We take a wide space and we cover many grounds getting nowhere. Because I can go over here and I can lie about what I did over there. I can go over here and I can lie about what I did over there. I can, you can put on many faces in many different areas of your life. But no matter what I did, I always ended up back home. It was the strangest thing for me. Something would happen, some kind of weird warrant, and I would come back to Harrisburg or Danville jail, and I'd go to court, and the judge would be like, that warrant was already served. It's no matter what I did, something brought me back home. It was like something would not let me run from being who I was meant to be. And when I was in Lexington, I love art. I've always loved it. I love to sing. I always thought I'd be this football star. That was my dream. But then I realized that we got our dreams, and then God has his dreams for us. So the football thing was not God's dream for me. But when I lived in Lexington, I used to, and even in Danville at the Art Center, I used to go to these art shows, and I'd go steal some clothes from a Goodwill or thrift store, and I'd put on something decent in my little dusty, dirty backpack. I'd hide it in a bush somewhere, and I'd go to these art shows, and I imagined that one day I would sell art, and I would be an artist, and people would get to see what's going on up there in my mind, not seeing how it was going to happen. And later on in life, ended up going to Isaiah House. Homeless. I was living in houses. If it was 20 degrees outside, I found houses that were abandoned. I found houses that had no electricity in them. I got kicked out of the Hope Center at some point. I lived behind the railroad tracks, along the railroad tracks, in the bushes. The bushes in Lexington at nighttime, there'd be hundreds and hundreds of people living along the railroad tracks. They cut those bushes down now for safety, but people lived in those bushes. I lived in those bushes. I lived on the cardboard. We put cardboard down. We had tree stumps for seats, and that's where I slept. And I remember sitting there sleeping one time. It was the brink of morning, and I remember you could hear the little birds, and I remember sitting there laying on that cardboard, and there were some other people, but I remember I started crying a little bit because in my mind I felt like I didn't deserve to be there. But I look at it now, I sort of deserve to be there. I'd put myself in those environments. I'd ran from everybody who loved me. I took the long way. Once I went to the Isaiah House, I remember it was crazy getting in that place. Sid, God uses he uses who he will to help you, to put you on the right path. You have got to have an open ear and open eyes to see what God has in store for you. I would have never thought that the day I was going through what I was going through spiritually, I was going through some very traumatic stuff spiritually. Some people would have said drug psychosis. I say God. It ended up bumping into running, really. I ran to a house, Phil Yates' house, and I don't know why. I ran to his house for safety. Phil got to riding around talking to me. I was telling him about my experience and something that was happening to me, and bumped into Sid Dunn back there. And Sid took me down to the restaurant, and that whole family got around me. They fed me. They talked to me about going to the Isaiah House. Tried to talk them out of it. Didn't want to go to the Isaiah House. Didn't need it. And he talked me into that. You know, it's wild that it's never the people you expect to save you. So stop looking for the people you expect. I didn't expect Sid to be such a grand part of my life now. There's no way. Couldn't get in, ended up going. That Monday popped up, and I remember calling Sid and said I'm ready. And then whatever he was doing, I have no idea what Sid was doing at the time. He stopped it, and he picked me up. And later on, he did something that was so amazing to me. It only takes about 20 minutes to get to the Isaiah House from where I live in Harrisburg. Took me and Sid about an hour and a half. And one day I went home, and it took me 30 minutes to get there. And I thought, I wonder why I got home so quick. And I called Sid. I said, man, why did I get home so quick? I said, it took us an hour. Sid took me the long way. He rode around and made it a long journey. He said, because I didn't want you to know how close you was to your home. He didn't want the idea of me saying, well, I'm just this far away. I might leave. So he took me the long way. And it wasn't until probably 3 months later I realized I was only 20 minutes from the house. Crazy. But I ended up going there and getting my life together. And about 9-10 months, they asked me what I wanted to do with my life. The CEO, Mark Lapalm, and I didn't know. But eventually I got this idea to, my youngest son was living somebody in a foster home. Some other lady had custody of him, and so I got this crazy idea to go get custody of him, and ended up doing that. I went to court. The judge was like, Germaine, I'm not saying I won't. He said, but wasn't you homeless? And it hadn't even dawned on me. So I'm looking at the fact that I must have been doing that on a blind faith. I went to court with no house, no home, not a bill to my name, no car, just hadn't managed anything. And so he said, I'm going to give you 90 days to get that in order and show me that you're capable. So I went back to Isaiah's house. They ended up giving me, they gave me a sober living house to live in, just for me and him. And I went back to court, and they gave me custody of my youngest son. Yeah. And, right after that, I got the crazy ass idea to go to college. And ended up going to Campbellsville University. I started there in 2018. I just graduated this June. Yeah. And not only did I graduate it, I won Best Artist of 2022 there. And that is one of my pieces there. If you recognize it, if you've been to Harrisburg, you know where Broadway is. That piece there I called, we had to do a film noir painting based off the film noir movies, the Humphrey Bogart, the movies with the sort of mystery and shadowy. And I ended up doing Broadway. And I chose Broadway because though Broadway is an historic place and some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life are right there, it still had its yin and yang. There was always one of the places that I always flocked to as a kid because there would be partying there. There would be drinking there. All the cars and the music and the party life and the place that I didn't need to be going. I try to keep it honest. So I call that Broad is the Way. But that verse also goes to say, because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way which leads to life, and there are a few who will find it. And before I close, I just want to say, I want to thank everybody, God, for all the people that he strategically put in my life to get me back on the narrow path that I feel like I'm on today. There's no doubt in my mind that I'm a child of God, and there's no doubt in my mind of the people who love me and the support. I'm just so grateful. And, my kids, Kyra, and my grandbabies, and, our relationship where we didn't have much of one. And kids are amazing because kids have this superpower. They don't know it, but they have a superpower to forget the bad stuff you do. Kids don't always hold on to it. No sooner than you spank them, the next day they're jumping in your lap. And so I just want to thank my kids for your support, and I love you, Kyra, and Tremaine, and Jordan, and just thank you all for allowing me to speak today. God bless.
World, you made it, and all of creation is breathing because you sustain it. Jesus, by your powerful word, you spoke out the earth and the heavens. And I will not worry or fret. My God is the God who will never forget all of his goodness and all of his promises. He's holding my world in his hand.